heard you say in the conversation today, I heard you say about, it's important to learn how to use your intuition and cultivate that. Over and over again, this word consistency came up. And so, what I wrote down is to master something, you need consistency. And, that's a huge takeaway from the discussion today. I like this idea of slow down to speed up. I feel like I'm in this period in my life right now where I need to slow down a bit. And as an entrepreneur, the secret sauce is just focusing on solving problems. Great. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Talks with T. I'm very honored to have Jen Blandos from Female Fusion joining us today.
Nice to be on the show today. I'm really excited.
I'd love for you just to give a brief intro on Female Fusion before we kind of dig into how it all began.
Sure. So Female Fusion, we're based in the UAE. We're currently the UAE's largest community for female-owned businesses, but we're going global. So we have a number of international members as well. And what we are is a community to support women in business, whether you are just starting out or you've been in business for 20 plus years and you have a 7 or 8 figure business. The whole idea is that we're there to support with networking, with resources, with an online portal, with connections, with events, basically anything you need to make that business journey easier.
Yeah. Amazing. I'd love to go through the path and the journey that led you to the founding of Female Fusion. I mean, we've spoken a couple of times now, and the journey by no means was a straight line. And so I'd love to kind of just talk the audience through it.
Yeah, I mean, it never is, right?
Yeah, 100%. If it was that easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, and I think as well, when I talk to entrepreneurs, a lot of times you never intend on doing what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
And, even for me falling into entrepreneurship, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. I never thought it was going to be that way. I when I was young, I loved living all over the world, traveling, experiencing different cultures. And, I had been living all over Europe, and I ended up back in London. And I thought, this is going to be so easy. Finally I'm in a country where English is the first language and I'm not having to learn how to speak different languages. And I couldn't find a job. I was like, what? But I've got all this international experience. Yeah. Why don't you want to hire me? And back then, so this was 2002, so many years ago. And back then the feedback I got was, but you don't have London experience. And
wow.
Right. And I was like, but I have experience from all over the world. Yeah. But they were like, but you need to have connections in London. And I even had one person say to me, and actually, it's a bit of a problem, your accent. You don't sound British. It's like, I'm Canadian, I don't sound British. So that it was kind of more like I needed money.
Yeah.
So,
it was more out of necessity.
Yeah, and I find as well with entrepreneurs that sometimes this happens, that I was like, okay, I'm good at this, so I set up a PR consulting business because that was my background in PR and communications. And then I had my clients from around the world coming to me and being like, can we work with you? And, could you train our staff? Because we really like, our staff are maybe not as good as what we'd like them to be. Could you help them be better at PR and comms?
Yeah.
And so it went from me being a bit desperate to cash to within about 18 months having a 7-figure business.
That's amazing.
Having 15 people working for me in central London.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was totally unexpected.
The lack of a British accent ended up not being a problem.
Yeah, and it's funny because actually even one of the companies that didn't hire me came up to me a couple of years later and he's like, I feel so embarrassed that we didn't hire you. I was like, no, good for me. It was, and I guess, at that point I realized that I was always destined to do entrepreneurship. And I remember my dad always said to me as well, my dad was like, you never like to follow the rules. You don't like authority. He's like, you're better being an entrepreneur.
Was that at a young age, or just kind of throughout?
Oh, throughout my life. You know, and it's funny now that I joke with my parents because they are always, I was a difficult child. You know, they would say no, I would say yes. They would say no, I would say yes. You know, it was, because it was always like, well, what happens if I do this? You know, I was just always really curious and stubborn. And very entrepreneurial, and I didn't even really remember that. And I don't know, there's a little bit of me that's a little bit woo-woo as well, and and I think all of us entrepreneurs are a little bit woo-woo.
You have to cultivate that in the right way to, you know, absolutely, you know, it's there, and you just have to kind of pull it out and use it in a way that's going to help. And
recently I had my human design done. I don't know if you've ever had that.
I have. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing,
and it really opened my mind to that. So I had asked my mum to get like the exact time of my birth and got this report.
And can you give an overview of what human design is for those who don't know?
Yeah, so human design is basically taking from the date, the time, the place of where you were born. And basically it says that your future, what's going to happen to you, is kind of already mapped out from the time that you're born. And it sounds super woo-woo, like especially, you know, for those of us that are so
logical,
practical and logical. And, you know, and somebody introduced me to this and I was like, well, okay, I'll try it. You know, I'm open-minded to trying things. And it was, I don't know if you found this, but it was just so remarkable how like me it was. And I shared it with my mum because I was like, do you agree with this? My mum was like, because it talks to you about different stages of your life. So what you were like as a child, you know, early adulthood, taking like different stages of how you should be living your life. And my mum said to me, she's like, childhood, bang on. And it even talks about, you know, you're probably very entrepreneurial and coming up with business ideas. And my mum said to me a while ago, she's like, you were always coming up with business ideas and telling me you were going to create this business, or, you know, trying to sell this to people in the neighborhood, or coming up with the business at school. And so I guess it was always within me. And so the human design, I don't know what your human design is, but my human design is that I'm a projector. And I sort of thought, like, learning about it, I thought that I was going to be more of a manifester or a generator because I'm always really busy doing things. And a projector is basically the person that shares their wisdom. And you kind of have to sit and come back. The whole idea is that you have this rich knowledge that you share. And I thought about it and thought, yeah, actually I am. And I need to do more of that. I need to stop being so busy being busy and actually start, you know, projecting more. What are you?
I'm a projector as well.
Are you?
Yeah. And it's amazing how much inherent knowledge we have sometimes, and it's sitting in the subconscious or unconscious mind, and a simple exercise like that just sucks it up and brings it to your conscious mind and just reiterates, doubling down on something you've kind of known in your gut.
And you know, this is one thing I found really interesting as an entrepreneur as well, intuition. And I think when we first start out in business, we always have intuition, but you always go to your logical brain. And what I found, I had this experience the other week that I was looking back over my entrepreneurship career and the times that I had intuition and when I used logic rather than intuition. And every time my intuition was right. And this is one of the things that I'm realizing, that I think sometimes as business owners that you have to trust that process, to trust your intuition and know that that is the person that we are and we have very good judgment.
And how do you sit with that intuition, to be able to hear it, to be able to cultivate it?
It's interesting. It's it's more of a practice, right? Because as I was saying, that when I was younger, it was always like, well, this isn't logical.
Yeah.
It's not logical, so you need to map out your reasons and think about it. But I always found that I often have a sense, and for me it's things like chemistry with the person and connection. And, when you own a business and when you are working with people, that is so essential, right?
Yeah.
That you need to work with people that you have good chemistry with and a good connection with, and they have the right attitude. I believe that skills can be taught. You can train people to do certain things in your business, but having that mentality or those values or the beliefs that align with yours, to me, is very important.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I found, I'm not sure if I'm correct or incorrect on this, but one thing I found is how a person spends their day tells you a lot about them. And so in interview questions now, sometimes some candidates are taken aback. I say, cool, walk me through what time you wake up. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? And then walk me from that point all the way till you put your head on the pillow.
Yeah.
And I find that the small things people say about how they think about organizing their day tells you a lot about how they organize themselves, how they organize their thoughts. And in those cases, I'm willing to take someone who has the discipline, who's methodical about how they allocate their mental resources, physical resources, their time. And I'll take that person every day over the person has the amazing track record or a ton of experience and lacks those things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what they're doing, right?
Fair.
Like, I guess, because I'm a big believer too, that I always have to hire people that are better than me.
Yeah, 100%.
Like in the beginning, when you first set up your business, there is a bit of the ego. And I see this as well with businesses when they first start. They think that like people are going to steal their ideas and, like nobody's like them. And then you realize that actually there's a lot of businesses that are similar to you. And so what makes you different? And so for me now, I'm not so concerned about that, but with my team. So for me as a person, and I think as entrepreneurs as well, that consistency is everything to, especially if you're going to master something in your business, that you need to be consistent because it takes time to learn that. Like even with running my business, it's very much a digital business. And if you would have said to me 5 years ago that's what I was doing, I wouldn't have believed it, because it's been me teaching myself and learning and going out there and trying to get the knowledge to be good at having a digital business and being consistent because I wanted it. But when I look at my team, it depends upon what it is, because sometimes I need people to be completely different than me, because that's going to get my business to the next level as well.
Yeah. You mentioned something as you were talking about human design, that you were stubborn, maybe you were a bit difficult as a child, but the flip side of that coin was you were curious and it gave you the courage. How do you think about cultivating the latter in children if it's not something that's inherently within them?
So I think about this a lot, and I've had these conversations with my parents as well, because I'm also a mother. I have 2 kids. I have a boy who's in university. He's 19, almost 20, and I have a girl who's 14. So you learn a lot about yourself and you reflect about your childhood, and then also seeing how your kids were, because I was told no a lot. I was told to stop thinking so big. I was told to not be so ambitious, and kind of fit in. And I realize and looking at both of my kids. So both of my kids are neurodiverse. My son has autism spectrum disorder, and my daughter has ADHD and dyslexia, dyscalculia. And I look at them and I think they're so amazing because they look at the world in a different way. And there's nothing wrong with being like that, because these are the people that are the geniuses, right? And you look, even as well, I was reading something the other day that, like, they were saying that a lot of entrepreneurs have, they're on the autism spectrum disorder, or, they've got ADHD or dyslexia, that there's something there that makes you a bit different. And I think that's amazing.
I think, having a different perspective, being different in a world that's so crowded, and everyone's trying to be the same to a certain extent, is definitely meaningful. And so I guess from your perspective, if I'm listening and I kind of think to myself that I'm not inherently curious or I'm not inherently courageous, I think a lot of people, and myself included, at times can go through negative self-talk. And it sounds like that was kind of thrown at you from a young age, but just kind of hearing your story, you kind of put it to the side and kept moving forward. And so for people who have that self-doubt at times, what have you found that helps cultivate that courage to press on?
I think it helps to always be curious and to always ask questions. But I understand, we all go through phases where we question our abilities or if we are doing the right thing. And sometimes I find that it helps to kind of slow down, to speed up a little bit, and to give yourself a bit of that self-care, because sometimes our minds can be so busy, with so many things, whether it's work, whether it's personal, that it makes it very difficult to have that. But then on the other hand as well, I see, because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, clearly because of what I do, and I hear a lot of times from them, there's a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I made the right decision, maybe I should take a job. And, I love being an entrepreneur. I wouldn't want to have it any other way. But entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. And that's totally cool.
It's not, there's no right or wrong.
No. And, for some people, I have friends who have like the most amazing careers and the most amazing lives being an employee. And that totally works for them and they're super happy. And I think it's just finding the thing that makes you happy, whether it's running a business, whether it's working for somebody else, whether it's freelancing. We're all sort of on our own journey. But I think not giving into that negative self-talk and self-doubt. And one of the things I say to our businesses a lot of times, and even to myself sometimes, is you have to stand in your power. And you have to know that you have a gift that you're sharing with the world, whatever it is. All of us have gifts in one way or another, and it's unlocking that gift that we can share.
One thing, last year on a professional level was quite tough for me, and one thing I found was it's easier said than done, but when that negative thought comes in, I started this practice saying, thank you, please go. And I wouldn't entertain that thought, because what I found was the more I interacted with it, the deeper I went down that negative thought hole. And so just acknowledging its existence and then saying, I'm not really going to entertain you was something that really helped me a lot. And we all have millions of thoughts going through our mind every day, and I found that I had the choice on which ones I would entertain and which ones I'd just say, thank you, please pass by.
Yeah, that's really insightful, and I like that. I'm gonna have to try that, because I mean,
and actually what was kind of sick was I found that I was addicted to the thought, because I'd noticed in my head saying, actually, just let me think about that for a second. So I noticed that there was a part of me that wanted to entertain debating with that thought, interacting with that thought, and I have to be like, nope, it's a zero policy. Because even if I gave it a little bit of string, it would take the whole rope. And so that was super helpful for me when I kind of hit rock bottom in terms of my positivity last year. And credit to my therapist, he's the one who gave me that insight, and it was definitely life-changing.
We all need a good therapist.
Yeah,
right?
I'm all for it. It's funny because especially in the Middle East, the first time I decided I was going to see a therapist maybe 7 or 8 years ago, my mom was worried that there was something wrong. My mom said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, why?" She's like, "Did I do something wrong?" I said, "Why?" She's like, why are you going to go see a therapist?" I said, "We should all be seeing therapists."
Yeah. And do you know, it's funny, I didn't see a therapist. I never saw one up until about 8 years ago.
Okay.
It was about 8 years ago. And I went through the most horrific divorce. And it was at that point that I realized I wasn't okay. And then it was at that point that I realized I should have seen a therapist a lot earlier, because a few years before that I had breast cancer as well, and I didn't deal with that. And I realized that when I went to see a therapist, that there were all of these things that were kind of holding me back in business, holding me back in life, that I needed to deal with. So that was really powerful. And my therapist was great. And then in the end she said to me, because I just loved going to therapy, like it was really good. I went, of course, I'm like high achieving, right? It's like go big or go home. And then in the end my therapist was like, "Jen, you don't need me anymore." She's like, "If you want to meet for a glass of wine," she's like, "no problem." She's like, "Therapist office," she's like, "You're good." She's like, "I have a waiting list, you're out."
That's so good. And you mentioned briefly that you survived breast cancer. I'd kind of love to know where you were in your professional career, where you were in personal life at that moment, just to set the context.
Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur since. So I set up my first business in 2003. I moved to the UAE in 2009. Initially came for a year. I had a really beautiful contract with the government here. And so the government said to me, "Well, you're not having the contract unless you set up a business here." So they're like, "You have to come for a year, train your team. Then if you want to go back to London, go back to London." That was 2009. I am still in the UAE.
That's amazing.
Like all of us, like I fell in love with the country, and again, I'm all in. This is my home. This is nowhere else do I want to live. So I had a business in 2012. I clearly remember all of this because I was in Saudi Arabia on a business trip, and I had this weird lump, and I thought, it's nothing, and it was really painful as well. And I thought, it's nothing. And it was like got more and more painful. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctor said to me, she's like, "You're 38 years old. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. But, let's get it checked out just in case." So I went totally, chill, no problem. I'm going to have a scan. It's fine. I can go back to work. So I had the scan, went back to work. I think I was in the office for maybe about 10 minutes, and I got a phone call from the head of the clinic saying, you need to come back. She's like, there's something wrong with your pictures. You need to come back. We need to do more. So I was still like super chilled out, you know, no problem, fine, whatever, had it done. The head of the clinic came and met with me, and she said, I don't like what I see. You need to go see your doctor within the next 24 hours, and I want you to go see a surgeon in the hospital. And then at that point, I think within about 10 days, I had had an operation. I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And then I didn't have to have chemotherapy because when they took the tumor out, the margins were clear. But then they said, but you need to have 35 days of radiotherapy. And so to me, it was, at the time, I didn't deal with it very well because my kids were really young. I think my daughter was maybe 2 or 3 at the time, and my son was a bit older and had just been diagnosed with ADHD. So my kids weren't easy. Life wasn't easy. I was married to somebody who wasn't particularly helpful. So I was taking my kids to school, going and doing radiotherapy, going to the office. And that was basically like on repeat for 6 weeks. I didn't take a break, just kept doing it. And I didn't even realize, and you know how I said after I did therapy, when I went through my divorce, that it was like then that I realized, like, what are you doing? You know, and I realized too that I was going to give myself cancer again if I didn't change my mindset and my mentality towards like my health, my well-being, work, stress, everything. So that was a pretty big wake-up call for me.
I mean, honestly, truly inspiring, hearing you kind of talk about that experience. There's probably a lot to unpack there. And so I'd like to understand, in retrospect, what did you learn about yourself, kind of going through that experience, clearly juggling, you know, family, potentially a life-threatening condition, and then, you know, you have this whole other business.
I mean, so much, right? I mean, the first thing, and I talk about this, so, you know, every October I get asked to speak at every breast cancer thing. I mean, that's a whole other thing. But the one thing that I say to people, and I think as entrepreneurs, we're probably guiltier than anybody else, is that we never put ourselves first. And, you know, and I think sometimes women, we can be even worse than this, because a lot of times, you know, whether you're a mother or not, we just tend to have this nurturing side of ourselves that I'm always caring about other people, and I'm always like bottom of the list. And, you know, I put my business first, I put my kids first, my friends, my family, everybody but me. And it really made me realize that if I'm not well, if I'm not here, all of this falls apart. And I kind of felt that was maybe the universe's way of saying to me, you need to sort this out and you need to change the way that things happen. And as I get older, I'm almost 50, that I look back at my life and I see all of the, even like some of the really horrible things that were just so painful at the time, whether it was in business or whether it was in life. I look back at it and go, what did I learn from this? And what did I need to learn to change my life? And, you know, big things like cancer, not taking care of myself, working too much, not eating well. I used to drink like 10 Diet Cokes in a day. Like, who does that, right? You know, don't do that anymore. But all of those sorts of things. And I really said, you know, I need to make fitness a priority for myself. But then, you know, the pandemic happened, and I found the pandemic really difficult. And I look back on it now and I'm like, why? You know, this, like, you should have had the time of your life. But I found when the pandemic happened that I went from, you know, making myself a priority, going to the gym, exercising, like having sports, going on lots of holidays, doing everything in moderation, to all of a sudden like being obsessed with work. And I went through like a 3-year period, and it's only been like the past few months where I've been like, you can slow down, like what are you doing? And you know, that was a little bit hard, because I had one business that I had for 18 years, and I walked away from that business, and the reason why I did is my business partner was my ex-husband, and you know, I'm not going to go into detail on all of that, but I realized in the pandemic, I don't want to work with my ex-husband every day. Like, who does, right?
Yeah. I can completely understand your perspective.
Yeah. And, you know, and so I was like, okay, I'm just, you know, I just walked away from it. I just walked away. And that's kind of where Female Fusion came from, as well. As Female Fusion was a Facebook group, and it was set up by someone else actually in 2015.
Okay.
And it was originally, the woman who set it up had lived in the UK a long time. She lived in Dubai years ago, like in 2010, and had set up the Facebook group just as a way to like connect with friends. And it had kind of grown and grown and grown. And so she approached me in the pandemic and said, well, you're not doing anything else right now. Do you want to help me monetize this and turn it into a business? Because what I was seeing was happening in the pandemic is there was so many people lost, either people who had businesses who were really unsure about how to collect payment, how to generate business, how to run their business, and then other people who were kind of like me back in 2002, didn't have a job, needed to do something, and were like, well, I can't find a job, so I might as well set something up myself, and needed that support. So I took that Facebook group and turned it into a business. And the idea was that it would be a community, and you would pay a membership fee for the community, and it would mainly be online, especially during the pandemic, that online made more sense. And then we would do some face-to-face meetups. So that's how it started. When it launched, we had about 100 people join, and it was great. You know, it was kind of like, oh, cool, you know, this is something kind of different. And then after about running it with the woman who set up the Facebook group, we realized that, you know, you can't run it with somebody who's living in a different country, because so much is needed here. So we split ways, and so I own the business, and we're a professional association, and we went from, in the one thing I'm really proud of, so at the beginning of 2022 we had 168 members, and at the end of 2022 we ended with pretty much 1,000 members. So I 5x the business, the revenue, the members. So that was pretty cool. So from a business operations perspective, learned a lot, worked too much, worked too hard. I'm not perfect.
None of us are.
None of us are. But, you know, slowly taking my foot off of the gas pedal a bit, because, you know, as we've scaled, I've been able to hire a much bigger team. So I have a full-time team of 5 that supports me now as well, which is great.
Nice. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the strategies and tactics you use to 5x your membership.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is, every business is different, but and I get asked this a lot actually by my members. They're like, how did you do it? How can I do it in my business? And I think probably one of the biggest things is consistency, especially when you have a membership and you have people who pay you money every single month. They want to know that they're getting value for their money. So I made a habit very early on in 2022 that you're going to know exactly what it is that we offer. You're going to have consistent communication from us. So, for example, things like every Monday morning, 8 a.m., come rain or shine, there's an email. There is, a consistent number of events. There is consistent content which is in the portals. So that consistency was really huge. The other thing as well, I think, was that I really focused on where the problems are, right? So for female entrepreneurs, I'm not, I don't like using the term female empowerment. It just, to me, it feels really icky because I'm like, I'm already empowered.
Yeah.
But, we do have a problem that women are still not getting access to the same opportunities as guys. It's a fact. Even in the GCC region in the summer, female-owned businesses got 0.1% of funding in the summer. There's something that's broken. So one of the things that I've started really championing, and I think as well that this has really helped us as a business, is looking at where the problems are and how we can fix it. So how can we help women get access to funding? Well, we need to help educate businesses to understand how your business needs to be set up and run to be able to get funding, but then also we need to connect you and introduce you to investors. So we're doing a lot of work around that. We're doing a lot of work also as well on procurement and helping connect our businesses to other businesses that will buy from them. Because again, women-owned businesses are getting 2 to 3% of funding or of procurement opportunities. So they're not getting access to those sorts of things. Other problems that they had, things like shipping and courier fees. Like businesses were struggling to run because it was so expensive. So I went to Aramex, went to quite a few of the courier companies, but I found that Aramex was the most supportive, and Aramex has given our members 45% discount.
Nice.
And I said to Aramex, I said, we better have a better price than what you give to the government. I was like, I don't want to hear that anybody has a cheaper price than us. Because, these are the, you give support to businesses like that, and it's good for the economy. It has so many positive effects. I went to Stripe, which is one of the main payment gateways that they use. And Stripe has given all of our members the first 100,000 dirhams that they spend with Stripe. There's no fees. It's like 4,000 dirhams in their pockets right there if they use that. So really getting clear on that offering meant that, people were seeing that and going, you solve a problem. I want to be part of that. So you're solving a problem. Other things as well was, we were properly bootstrapping. We still are, right? I've taken no financing. The only financing that's gone into Female Fusion has been my savings. And so we've also, I'm big on technology, like systems, automations. If I can automate it and find a way to do it. So we really created really good systems. So something that would maybe take a week to do, I can get it done in an hour because I found a way that tech will go and solve that. So that has been quite a good thing. And then also as well, building relationships with organizations that align with the same thing that we do and supporting our values and sharing that information. So we have a lot of support from a lot of organizations. There's a lot of different things that I've done, but it's what a year, and we're growing a lot.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you have 30,000 members, non-paying members as well as part of the community.
Yeah. So we have 1,000 paying members. The way that we operate is we make our membership available twice a year. And the reason for that is before we had it that you could join anytime. And it was just so much for my team, because there's so many things that you get as being part of a member, even things as well like media opportunities. We have a lot of great relationships with a number of different journalists and publications, and oftentimes that they'll come to us and say, look, here's a list of 5 spokespeople that we need on these topics. Who would you recommend? Who would you put forward?
Okay.
So even as well, like the value for these small businesses, they don't have budget for a PR agency. So we're kind of helping to support them getting press coverage, which is quite cool. And so many of our members have gotten press coverage as well.
That's amazing. And how do you, as an entrepreneur, how do you focus on, first, how do you identify the problems? And then the second is, how do you decide which ones to prioritize and focus on from the laundry list of problems?
Yeah, well, that's the entrepreneur's problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So many ideas. And it's become a bit of a joke in the business. So we use project management is super important when you're running, especially a business like ours, that you need to be on top of everything and you need to be very clear who's doing what. So we use a project management system called Monday.com because we love the automations on it, and it works with everything. And the team have created a Monday board for me, which is, it's called Jen's Ideas, and it has a little squirrel next to it. So, you know, like it's like a big list of things that I want to do. And, you know, I say this to our members as well, because as entrepreneurs, we want to do everything, right? But that can kill your business.
Yeah.
And this is where, so I've been very careful not to dilute what we do. So I've had organizations come to me and say, but could you offer this? Could you add this? Could you add that? We could, but then if I look at it, it takes away from what our focus has to be in our core. So I'm very careful about that. And then any new thing that we offer, it needs to bring value to our members, but it also needs to contribute to the bottom line of the business, because we have to be profitable at the end of the day. You know, we've been going I've been running the business myself for about 14 months now, and we need to deliver a serious profit, because you know, I'm not in business for charity. Like it needs to make a profit. So I look at everything very carefully, and it's like, nope, that is not going to deliver enough profit to the business. So focus on the key things. So one of the things that we're adding this year is international membership, because we get contacted all the time. Can you be in this country or that country, or can I join? And we do have women from around the world who are part of our community. But I want to have the memberships. We have UAE membership and we have international membership. And the cool thing about that is that it will give people in the UAE access to other markets and other people who might buy from them, or who they can source from, or maybe even who they can have support with if they go to a different country. But then also people in other countries get introduced to everyone around the world and maybe even want to set up a business here. So that's our big thing that we're focusing on this year. So I don't want to dilute anything from what we do with our members, but to be able to grow an international membership, so that adds value to everybody.
Yeah. And in terms of a membership business, how do you identify or experiment with pricing in terms of what's the right price point to make sure that from a revenue perspective you're maximizing that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the thing about memberships is that it can be anything you want it to be, right? And you need to look at the value of that. So initially, when you start out with a membership business, you need to start out with the founding member rate, because you're unproven, right? So your founding member rate is normally something which is just going to cover your costs. So Female Fusion had a founding member rate for about 18 months. And I took the decision in May 2022. I was like, price needs to go up. So I doubled the price of membership, and we doubled the price of membership. And so many people said to me, they're like, you're crazy. Nobody's going to buy your membership. How are you, and it wasn't even expensive, right?
Yeah.
We're talking like, I increased the price from like $42, like 158 dirhams, up to like $85. It wasn't even like 300 dirhams. It wasn't even a lot. And we now have more people paying the increased price than we do the founding member rate, because everybody sees the value that's offered. Now, the price of the membership is still way too low for everything that people get access to. And if you benchmark it internationally and look at international membership organizations and what they're offering, we're probably like 1/4 of the price of what's being charged internationally. So the price is going up. And remember how I said, it's where we need to stand in our power, right? And in the beginning, I wasn't as confident with that, where I was like, oh, who's going to buy my membership? And now I look at it like, what we have is amazing. And, of course we have to charge for it. I have a full-time team of 5. I have like 3 part-time people. I have, all of that support. You have to pay for it. And I've come to the point, when you stand in your power, it's also recognizing when people say to you things like, it's too expensive, or how can you charge that for startups, or you're not helping female entrepreneurs. That's where you stand in your power and go, yeah, but like the return on investment is huge. If you can pay to go out for brunch, or if you can go buy that expensive pair of shoes, why aren't you investing in your business? So,
and I think for entrepreneurs, especially in the early days, there's a high correlation between what we charge and what we price our product at, and our confidence in our capability and in our business. And so as the confidence goes up, so does our conviction that the price point can increase as well. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes I see early entrepreneurs make. I mean, we've
all done it, right?
I've done it. And, I think one of the best pieces of advice I got was, I read this somewhere. It's double your price and then see what happens, and then double your price and see what happens, and keep doubling your price until someone laughs you out of the room. Then you've gone,
hit the right price.
You've gone maybe one step too far, but you could just take a small step back from that point.
So, and it's interesting actually, because so in my previous business, I had no problems being the most expensive on the market, because I knew I had the best product, and I was like, look, if you don't want to work with me, that's fine. You'll come back in 6 months because you won't find better. That was kind of my mentality. But I guess the only thing about a membership association is that I care deeply about every single one of our members. And this is the thing that I love about my team as well. And we say, like, everybody wakes up in the morning to go to work with the belief of like, how can we help somebody today? How can we like make a difference either to somebody's business or change the environment? And so where I feel in my other business, where I was dealing with corporates and government, and I would, no problem, there's always like the little part of me where it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to charge more because I want to help and I'm coming from a place of service. But then this is where I have to have the talk with myself and say, yes, but you're not a charity, right? You have an office, you have team, you have like all these responsibilities. Plus you have 2 kids and a mortgage and, everything else that I've come to the belief now that it's, if you think we're too expensive, I'm sorry, or maybe we're not the right organization for you right now. So it will become much more aspirational. So the doors to our membership are opening at the end of February. And then after that, the price is actually tripling. It's
Nice.
not doubling. It's tripling. And it's tripling because I've realized that just the pure value of what we are offering is immense. And my members who have been in the community for a while, who get that, have even said to me, they're like, Jen, put up your price.
Yeah. I think for us in our business at Bayzat, there was a light bulb moment where somebody said, it was like a week where 2-3 customers said, I can't believe this is all I'm paying for this. And I was like, whoa, okay. I mean, I need to wake up and stand in my power, as you said. And I mean, Jen, there's a couple of things I heard you say in the conversation today. I heard you say about, it's important to learn how to use your intuition and cultivate that. Over and over again, this word consistency came up. And so, what I wrote down is, to master something, you need consistency. And, that's a huge takeaway from the discussion today. I like this idea of slow down to speed up. I feel like I'm in this period in my life right now where I need to slow down a bit. And as an entrepreneur, the secret sauce is just focusing on solving problems. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, you being open, and for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jen. Have a good one.
You too.